Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm so excited for because we're going to be forecasting the year a bit. That's right friends, today I'm going to be chatting through my most anticipated book releases of 2025 and wow, there are so many. 2025 is definitely going to be a stellar release year and I'm hoping some of these books make the top of my list for years to come. And speaking of things that are going to be a large part of 2025 for me personally, I'm also so excited to say I'm partnering up with Curology for this video. I'm so excited to be partnering up with Curology for this video because they're quite literally skincare products I use every single day, morning and night. And if you're looking to add some new elements to your personal skincare routine in the new year, Curology could be a fantastic option for you. And if you're not familiar, Curology is a leader in made-for-you skincare and everything is sent directly to your door. I could not emphasize enough how unbelievably convenient this is. I am never out of moisturizer because Curology always knows when I need more moisturizer, and given the cold, dry weather outside, this could not be more important. So thank you so much to Curology. Alongside their amazing sort of skincare products like moisturizer, cleanser, lip balm, pimple patches, you can also work directly with the dermatology provider to gain access to skincare items with active ingredients to target things like fine lines and wrinkles or acne. Personally speaking, I've been using a retinoid-based product from Curology, which I love so much, and I also really appreciate that my dermatology provider checks in on me and can update my prescription based on my current skin needs. And I truly adore it immensely, especially now more than ever in this cold winter season. It is officially freezing outside in Texas. It's been like 20 degrees every single day and so dry, and my skin has definitely reacted to that quite strongly. Luckily, with my favorite Curology products, they help me stay hydrated and fight against those pesky dry patches I often develop. I talk about it all the time, but their cream moisturizer is amazing. I go through bottles and bottles and bottles of this. I basically lather myself with it completely, especially during this time of year. It's so hydrating without leaving an oily residue. Their cleanser is also amazing. I especially struggle with finding cleansers I like during this time of year, but their cleanser is gentle and doesn't extract too much moisture out of my skin, and I love it. And obviously, the barrier balm. If you are going outside for a prolonged period of time, this helps immensely with chapped skin. Put it on your lips, put it on areas of your face that are maybe exposed to really cold wind. It will help you so much. If you're looking to update or evolve your own personal skincare routine in the new year, Curology truly could be a perfect fit for you. And of course, I do have a very special offer code. New customers can get their first box with Curology for only $15. If you guys want to learn more, I will have that link down below. But thank you again to Curology for sponsoring this video. Let's go ahead and jump into all the new releases I cannot wait to read in 2025. There are truly so many books to chat about, so let's just go ahead and dive right in with the month of January, starting with the Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. And this book comes out January 7th. Adrienne Young is one of my favorite authors. She has such a great balance of romance and angst and beautiful lyrical writing with a mystery usually at the core of her books. And this is a story that centers two twins, James and Johnny, and they've always had this deep intuitive connection with each other. And with this connection, James felt right away when her brother actually passed away, even before the phone rang to let her know. And now we find James in California trying to settle her brother's affairs, deal with his things, and also begin to process the very tragic and unexpected passing of her brother. Then she also begins to realize there might be some suspicious elements surrounding his death, which sort of sends her off on a mystery to figure out what happened. Again, this author has such fantastic vibes and a beautiful atmospheric writing style, so I'm really curious to see how this book in particular is going to develop. I also want to give a shout out to this cover because I really appreciate that this author kind of has a consistent vibe with her cover releases every year, a new color palette, but they kind of coordinate, and I'm here for it. Next up, we have Death of the Author by Ninendi Okorafor, which comes out January 14th. This is one of my all-time favorite authors, and she actually has a couple books coming out this year, and I could not be more excited about it. Fantasy, sci-fi, literary fiction. I will read anything this author puts out because her writing and just contemplations are always so fantastic. And this is a full-length novel. She tends to write a lot of short stories, which I also adore, but I'm excited that we have a lot of pages to enjoy with this one. It follows our main character Zulu, and her life is sort of falling apart. Her recent novel has failed. She's lost her job. Her sister's getting married, so she has all of these various events in her life, and she really just doesn't really know what she's going to do or her life is going to take her next. So she decides to do something a little unexpected, and that is to write a new book completely different than anything she's ever written before. And she's writing this sci-fi novel which has contemplations on AI and robots set in a dystopian sci-fi environment. retirement. And then from there, her life begins to evolve and the line between life and fiction begins to blur. Again, love this author. This sounds so interesting. I cannot wait to read this. Then we have Lightfall, which also comes out January 14th. This is described as an epic fantasy of vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. Three of my favorite things, if I'm being honest. And it's also said to be for fans of Justice of Kings. And we all know how I feel about Richard Swan's recent Empire of the Wolf series. But this book is set in a fantasy landscape where, for centuries, vampires roamed the land freely until a group called the Greys came out of nowhere and decimated the vampire population by half. Now, fleeing for their lives, all the remaining and surviving vampires all fled to the same city, and now no one is allowed to leave the confines of the city, and there is very much a social hierarchy at play and like limited resources. In this book, we're following our main character who works as a maid, and she is very unhappy with her lot in life. She's tired of her employer, she's tired of her work, and one day she basically finds out a piece of information that she could use for blackmail. And what starts first is kind of like a murder mystery investigation, I believe spirals into this like larger vampire conspiracy, and I am so curious about it. I do love vampires, I love politics, I love a mystery ballooning into some sort of like larger thing, and I feel like this could definitely be a vibe. Next up is WaterMoon, which is also coming out on January 14th, and this sounds like a magical, lyrical fantasy with a bit of romance. It sounds very dreamlike and luscious. It's set in Tokyo, and basically we follow our main character who runs this like magical pawn shop where people can sell their regrets. At the beginning of the story, our main character finds this pawn shop ransacked and her father missing. Obviously, trying to figure out what to do, our main character is further confronted by the unexpected arrival of this like charming physicist. They embark on a journey together into this like mythical world to try to find her missing father. Based on the cover alone, I feel like this is going to give a really luscious kind of like dream-like quality to the writing. So I really want to pick this up. I feel like this could be a great winter read. Alrighty, now moving on into the month of February with one of my most anticipated releases of the year. I cannot believe I get another book by this author so soon after the concluding novel of his last trilogy. And that is Grave Empire by Richard Swan, which comes out February 4th. So this book I do believe is set in the same world and empire of the Empire of Wolf series, but we're following a new age and new characters. The tagline is, "Where blood once turned the wheel of the empire, now it's money." And we're following our main character who's a low-ranking ambassador in this empire. And a new age of exploration and innovation has dawned. And this empire is basically trying to jockey its power and become like the foremost power in the world based on the new economic innovations of the time. But dark days are coming, a mysterious plague has broken out, there's unrest in some of the northern elements of this kingdom. And again, I think our character sort of gets pulled into an unexpected conspiracy. I love Richard Swan's writing so much. I feel like he combines elements of horror, like philosophical musings. Like he really loves empire-focused books, which I really love. I really feel like he leans on like real historical influence to inform the political machinations of his fantasy settings from an economic point of view, from a philosophical point of view. And so my history heart just like devours his books and just makes his stories feel so rooted and so unputdownable. So yes, I cannot wait to read this. I am so excited. Next up, we have Green Teeth, which comes out February 25th, and this is a new cozy fantasy story that sounds adorable. This is a fae folklore-inspired cozy fantasy story centering found family, and our main character, I believe, is like a lake monster, like a Loch Ness monster situation, which I am so excited about. Basically, beneath the surface of a lake lurks a monster with needle-sharp teeth. This is our main character, Jenny, and Jenny has never spoken to a human before, but when a witch is thrown in her lake, she decides that she is worth saving, which I think sort of transforms her life forever and sets her off on an unexpected path and journey. Found family, cozy fantasy. This sounds like a really cute inspiration for like the start of it, and I'm really curious about this one. Next up, we have The Amber Owl by Juliette Marillier. Yes, Juliette Marillier is coming out with a brand new book, and this is also coming out on February 25th. February is turning out to be a very exciting month for me, and I cannot wait to read this. If you're not familiar, like Juliette Marillier is the queen of what I like to describe as like cottagecore fantasy. She centers nature, her writing style is lyrical, there tends to be a dash of magic, but her books also tend to have some really dark themes and like emotional arcs that she really explores so well. This book follows our main character, Stasia, and she lives in a very isolated farming village, and she's also kind of an outcast there, living on the edges of this very mysterious forest with her very unusual dog, and she also seemingly has a special connection with animals. However, though, chaos descends on this village after raiders come from far away, and from there I believe we watch as our main character goes on a quest to try to save this village even when she's transported far away from home. Again, I love Juliette Merlier's writing so much, so I truly cannot wait to pick this book up. Alrighty, now moving into the month of March, the first book is another incredible release I'm so excited to read as soon as possible, and that is Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. This is the third book to the Legendborn cycle, which is one of my favorite YA fantasy series. In it, we're following our main character Bree, and this series is a contemporary fantasy series following our main character Bree, and at the beginning of book one, she moves onto the campus of UNC to participate in this like accelerated high school program. There, she witnesses a magical attack. Basically, it makes her realize that magic is real, monsters are real, and there's actually this like secret society on campus that she tries out for. This series is all about like magic and legacy and family. There's like friendship elements. It has such a great like mystery to it. It is so good. I have been on the edge of my seat waiting for this third book to come out. I can't wait. Another book coming out on March 4th is another book I've been waiting too long for, and that is The Ragpicker King by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book to her adult romantasy series that I feel like is criminally underhyped. The first book is called Swordcatcher, and I adored it. I am pretty harsh on romantasy on my channel, but this series to me has it all. Like great angst, great romantic pacing, great fantasy world building, great character dynamics. I was obsessed with the first one. I could not put it down, and I am thrilled that the second book is finally incoming. This is a multi-POV book set in a fantasy city-state setting where like economics and trading is king here. Our first main character we follow is someone called a sword catcher, trained to be able to impersonate the prince and basically catch a sword for him if the need arises. We also follow our other main character, who's a very talented healer and part of a cultural group that is ostracized but also has magic. I cannot emphasize enough how good this series is. Please read it, and I will be reading this on March 4th. Also coming out on March 4th is The River Has Roots, which is by the same author who wrote This Is How You Lose the Time War, another book I adored immensely. This looks to be a short story, but still a book I am so much looking forward to. It's also a fae-centered story following two sisters who live on the edge of the land of fairy, who could not be separated even in death. And I believe this book centers like romance, obviously a familial bond. I'm sure the writing style is going to be absolutely scrumptious. So thrilled. Alrighty, next up we have the month of April, which is also centering some releases from some of my all-time favorite authors. First, we have A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book to the Shadow of the Leviathan series, the first one being The Tainted Cup, which made my favorite books of the year of last year. So obviously, I'm thrilled that we already have a second book coming out. I describe this book as like a fantasy Sherlock Holmes-esque story with a fantasy setting that very much reminds me of like Attack on Titan meets Godzilla. It's so unique, and the mystery elements of it combined with the character elements of it are just so incredible. The first book introduced us to our two main characters that had a very unlikely working relationship with each other. They were taking on what seemingly was like a smaller scale mystery, but it ballooned very quickly. So obviously I feel like the conspiracy of whatever occurred in book one is going to continue into book two, and it's just so good. I love Robert Jackson Bennett. He's one of my favorites. We also have Silverborn by Jessica Townsend coming out on April 25th. This is Nevermore book 4. Nevermore series, in my opinion, is just like one of the best middle grade fantasy series being released currently. Like, I feel like this could be an all-time great by the time it's done. It's just clever, well written, a great mystery, great characters. It's just like delightful. It follows our main character Morgan Crow, who was born cursed, and she was actually expected to die pretty early on, but instead she was basically saved by this man who has magical powers and like brings her to this faraway magical place. And from there, she enters a series of trials to try to enter this like secret society. Lots of mystery, magic, and friendship begins to balloon from there, but it's just amazing, and I'm so thrilled we're finally getting book 4. Moving on now to the month of May, we have another huge release by one of my favorite authors, and that is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, and this comes out May 13th, and wow, a horror fantasy standalone by Joe Abercrombie. I truly could not ask for anything more. This also seemingly centers like religious horror, which is a subgenre of horror that I personally really like when I finally work up the courage to read it. And it says, holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds. We follow our main character, who is a priest, and he's just been assigned to an unlikely congregation full of murderers and monsters and all types of like terrible and terrifying things. And the mission he was tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous ends. Say no more, Joe Abercrombie. I will be reading this. Another very big release coming out in the month of May is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, who also wrote One Dark Window, a series that I enjoyed but didn't love, but I am still curious about this release and in general want to review and cover it on my channel. And I won't lie, the setup and synopsis of this does sound like something I would really like. It's giving kind of gothic, medieval, romantasy quest vibes. We follow our main character, who is a prophet, and she's been living kind of in a monastery for the past 9 years. She's just been haunted by dreams of possible futures, and one day she has to like flee this monastery or like go out on a quest to like see one of these visions come forth, and she's traveling with a knight whose future she cannot see. Honestly, I'm intrigued. I hope I like this. There's elements of Rachel Gillig's writing I've always enjoyed. I think her concepts are strong, so I'm hoping this series will be something I really enjoy. Another book coming out in the month of May that just sounds honestly incredibly engrossing and beautiful is Awake in the Floating City. This comes out May 13th, and this is kind of a sci-fi dystopian, more literary fiction leading tale. It basically follows the last 2 remaining people alive and living in the city of San Francisco after it's been almost entirely flooded. Follow first our main character, Bo, who knows that she should leave San Francisco. She has no one left. There's really no one there. She's an artist who's sort of been struggling to create for years now, and she's finally beginning to plot her escape alongside the help of her cousin until one day she receives a note slipped under her door from her elderly neighbor requesting to see if she could actually hire her as a caretaker. So she decides to stay in this city. And this book sort of centers the relationship between Bo and Mia, who is the 130-year-old woman who hires her to help take care of her. This unlikely relationship centers the story. I think this is going to be like very contemplative, very beautiful, very harrowing and dark at the same time. And I hear the writing style in particular of this book is just stunning. Another book coming out in May is The Isles of EmberDark by Brandon Sanderson. And this is technically his secret project number 5. This is a project I backed sometime last year, and it again comes out in May of this year. Reading over the synopsis, it's not super clear exactly what this is about, but I'm very like Cosmere minded at the moment after finishing Wind and Truth, and there's a lot of books within the Cosmere I want to reread and also read with a different lens. So I'm trying to stay very up to date with all new Cosmere releases, but also reread some old Cosmere releases too. So this is obviously a very anticipated release. And then the last book coming out in May, I cannot wait to read, is The Incandescent, and this comes out May 13th as well. And this is described to be for fans of like Niobe Novak's School of Man series and Plain Bad Heroines. This is a sapphic dark academia tale, and the setting of this book is a magic school, which always is kind of a winner for me. And follow our main character, Dr. Walden, who is the director of magic at one of the most powerful magical schools in England. Her days consist of meeting with students, making sure things are running smoothly, and also securing the school's boundaries from demonic incursions. She's very good at her job, and it's her central job to make sure that the school and the 600 students who attend the school stay safe from the demonic manipulations that could interfere with them. But in reality, the thing that she has to keep them most safe from apparently is herself. The synopsis alone really calls me in. I'm very curious about this. I love all the inputs. I'm hoping it's a vibe. Then I have 2 releases for the month of June. The first is Forgery of Fate, which comes out June 3rd. This is described as Beauty and the Beast meets 6 of Crows. Very intriguing. And more specifically, this is a fantasy romance-centered story about one girl who can paint the future. Also a cursed dragon lord. think this could be a lot of fun. I don't read a lot of young adult anymore, but I've had some great success with it again near the tail end of last year, and this sounds specifically like some young adult I would love. And then the other book coming out in June is The Witch Roads, which comes out June 10th, and the tagline is "Status is hereditary, class is bestowed, trust must be earned." We follow our main character who is kind of in the lower echelons of society, but she's assigned to basically help transport this like group of like powerful soldiers led by this prince, helping them navigate this like very dangerous and poisonous place, but they of course do not heed her advice. And this arrogant prince like goes into this tower, and the man who returns is not the same person who went in. And I think the story begins to devolve from there, and it sounds like kind of creepy, but kind of classic, and I'm curious. Then of course we also have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, which comes out June 10th. And this appears to be a nice lyrical fantasy standalone by this author that centers vampires, which is always something I personally enjoy. 3 women, 3 bodies, all buried in the same place, and their lives and roots and magic, I believe, get intertwined from there. And then they all grow teeth. The synopsis is very short, very vague, but definitely calls out to me. And I really like V.E. Schwab's writing, so this should be a good one. Next up, we have the month of July, starting first with one of my favorite authors coming out with a new book, and that is The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, which comes out July 15th, and this is a witch-centered, multi-generational story. 3 women from 3 different eras, and I think their interconnectedness with magic. And I also believe there's kind of like a haunted manuscript of some kind. I don't know. I just already know I'm definitely going to be buying and reading this and probably loving it. Silvia Moreno-Garcia has never led me astray, and I think this is kind of like a horror fantasy novel, which I feel like is some of her best genre combinations. In August now, we have a book that I know many of you guys have marked down on your calendar, and that is Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang, again, one of my favorite authors of all time, and this is like a dark academia story. It's also described as like Dante's Inferno meets Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, so those vibes feel very strong to me. And basically, we're following 2 graduate students who have to put aside their rivalry to venture into hell to save the soul of their professor. I love a quest-centered story, to say the least, and the fact that this is a quest set literally in the landscapes of hell intrigues me to no end. I really enjoy R.F. Kuang's standalone novels and her series, so obviously this is a book that's right at the top of my TBR for the year, and I know is going to be a huge release as well in 2025. The next book coming out in August I can't wait to read is The Possession of Alba Diaz, which comes out August 19th, and this is by Isabel Cañas. I love Isabel Cañas' writing so much. She didn't have a book release last year, so I'm so thrilled that she is back. She writes the most entertaining, like melodramatic romance novels that have historical influence that also have a lot of horror elements as well. Her books are just absolutely unputdownable, and this book follows our main character who becomes possessed. It's set in 1765 and a plague sweeps the land, and our main character flees her like wealthy merchant family and her newly betrothed fiance to his family's like silver mine, trying to find refuge. However, shortly after she arrives there, she's possessed and she begins to have hallucinations and all of these things, and she turns to an unexpected person, her fiance's cousin, who's kind of like her enemy. Like, they should have nothing to do with each other, but they're inexplicably drawn to one another. And let me tell you, I'm reading this book right when it comes out because I love them so much. Isabel Cañas is just incredible. The next book is The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the second book sort of set in the same cozy world as The Spell Shop, following now our main character named Turlu, who's like a magical botanist, and she thought her life was over after she got caught enchanting a plant at a magical library, which might be very familiar to us. But now at the beginning of this story, she finds herself like awake in this very desolate place surrounded by greenhouses, and it's kind of like a dream come true. So, and from there, she also begins to work alongside this gardener and a sentient rose. I really enjoyed The Spell Shop. I thought it was a very fun and endearing cozy fantasy story. So I have a feeling The Enchanted Greenhouse is going to deliver a lot of similar vibes. So I will for sure be checking it out when I need a palate cleanser. So this is also Gonna be so fun. The next book coming out in August I can't wait to read is Hemlock in Silver by T. Kingfisher, which comes out August 19th. And this is T. Kingfisher's dark reimagining of Snow White. I love T. Kingfisher's writing so much. Any reimagining she brings to the table, I'm going to be reading. And this follows our main character who knows a little of politics, but knows a lot about poison. So when she's hired and brought to the castle to help treat the Princess Snow, who has been poisoned and is put under this like magical sleep, she's working against the clock to try to figure out what is going on. And then from there, she's like transported through this mirror to this like magical other world. And she's making all types of dark discoveries. And she also has some companions alongside her. A quest story that's also a Snow White reimagining. Say less. T. Kingfisher is already an instant read for me. Another book that is a huge release for me personally for this year doesn't really have a set date yet, and that is Alecto the Ninth by Thompson Muir. This is the fourth book in the Locked Tomb series by this author, and I love this series so much. Each book is so interesting and distinct from each other, full of so many charismatic characters you will fall in love with. It's a necromancer in space story. The first one introduces us to our main character, Gideon the Ninth, and Gideon the Ninth has been trying to leave this planet called Ninth House her entire life, but she's always been stopped by her arch nemesis, Harrow the Ninth. They basically strike a deal, work together, travel to the first house to participate in this competition, and it sort of devolves into like this murder mystery story, but every book has such a stylistic change from the others. So honestly, I can earnestly say I have no idea what's going to happen in Alecto the Ninth, but I love this series. It just keeps me on the edge of my seat. I love the writing so much, so I cannot wait for this book to come out. And I don't even know when it's coming out. We also have a big release coming in September, and that is Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is the second book in the Hierarchy series, the first one being The Will of the Many. That also had a dreaded cover change that was a little controversial. The new cover for this book has not been released yet, but I really enjoyed The Will of the Many a lot. It's a Roman-inspired fantasy series. It introduces us to our main character whose kingdom was basically taken over by this like evil empire, and they have a hierarchy system where everyone has to give over their will to the empire. And the higher you are up on this hierarchy, you can literally access more will, and it's kind of like their magic system. Our main character gets wrapped up in all different types of conspiracies. He's forced to be a spy for lots of different people, and he has to go to this very prestigious military school. Lots of plot, lots of twists and turns. I really enjoyed book one. I need to know what's going to happen in book two, so excited about this. And then the last book on my most anticipated releases of 2025 is Queen Demon by Martha Wells. Last year, I fell in love with the Murderbot series by this author, and I actually read the first book in this series, which is The Witch King, a couple years ago when it came out, and I did really enjoy it. Martha Wells has this innate talent in creating almost like a cozy, endearing cast of characters that have such lovely found family elements, but she pairs it with like some very intense plot lines. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds for me. I really liked Witch King. It was very strange structurally, very confusing in a way that I personally liked. It had an interesting lore and mythos and magic system. It sort of threw into the chaos of like what was happening. And this is a sequel, which I wasn't actually anticipating, as I thought the first one was going to be a standalone, but I'm excited to be back with our fire demon Kai and all of his friends and see what in the world is going on, because Martha Wells writing in a fantasy setting, yes please. Sci-fi, fantasy, I'll take it all. Alrighty guys, those are my most anticipated releases of 2025. Again, big shout out to Curology for sponsoring this video. Again, I will have a link down below to my special offer. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please let me know some of your most anticipated releases, as I want to add more books to this list. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!